So yeah, I think this is one of our community discussion events, and essentially this is about us getting together, talking about the Manchester Java community, thinking about organising, planning, how do we make sure we've got interesting and engaging kind of events on going forward, and also a few other things around, I suppose, the bits around the edges of running the events, things like the website. We've got, we're trying to kind of create a bit of a presence with our own website or a YouTube channel, things like that. So we're just going to talk a little bit around various things, and we've got a little bit of a list that I think if I can find, I'll share it. Can't find it. That Craig pulled together. Bit of a, I suppose, a mini agenda, we could say. Share. Yeah, you see that all right. So we've got a bit of a list of things to kind of talk about today. I think, mentioned the website there, and the JBig session. Those two things are kind of linked, so we'll maybe talk about that first. Any kind of ideas for future guests? Obviously, social events are always good. So that'd be kind of nice to get another one of those in. And yeah, we started to talk a little bit about how we get back in person in Manchester and have some kind of face-to-face events again at some point. Back to basic sessions. So I suppose that's one Craig can talk a little bit more about in a bit. So I'll stop sharing and we can just start maybe having a chat start off with kind of website stuff. So, I mean, Jonathan, do you want to kind of talk a bit about that? I'm not sure if we've made much progress today, but
no, I've not made much progress on it myself, and I apologise for that.
No,
things are up in the air in work at the moment. It's just yeah, I won't go into that. So I suppose just to recap, so I picked an existing template, converted it to a JBig project. Basically taking the HTML pages, converting it into it's using one of the template engines JBig supports, just to get something. This is how it would work if you wanted to take an existing template. I got the impression the template wasn't well liked. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah,
right. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't think I had too strong an opinion. It was just more the kind of the look and feel for me, like the kind of styling. So not necessarily the content. Maybe
no, well, the content was just, I can't even remember. Was there any content? It was just, I wanted to go through that process. It's been a while since I've done that process for any particular site. I suppose it's because I'm not a designer, I'm not a web designer. I don't profess to be. If I quite like Bootstrap because it's functional more than anything. But I tend to build, back-end systems, so it's kind of, as long as it's functional, I don't really mind if it doesn't look brilliant. But I suppose that's, from my perspective, I'm thinking we need to kind of identify something we do all like to start with, whether that's just taking, Bootstrap, starting with that's one option. I think we talked about that last community session. I think that's when you had to drop off, Nick.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose that when I think about this, I'm thinking about it kind of, I suppose, it's nice to have a template, but maybe they're just trying to do too many things that we don't necessarily need, potentially. So then kind of flipping that a bit and thinking about what is this, what's the first most important thing we would like on our website, and trying to build a slice of the website, which I think, provides that.
Yeah.
Which might be a list of events. It might be, just even a landing page that talks about the community and highlights kind of some of the kind of, I suppose, key people who are involved in organising, and links off to our different socials and stuff like that. Maybe that's the starting point, to be honest. I don't know.
Okay.
So I don't know whether that means a template or not.
I've got a question, please. When it comes to Java, the only thing that I know from Java 11 upon, it's when it comes, it's an open source, but still, once you commercialize it, once it comes to commerce, you have to pay for it. I mean, not you, but maybe the company where you are working in. Is it the same with everything open source, or is it like
No, so what do you mean specifically? Like, is this a library that you're talking about, or a technology you're talking about?
I mean, it's all about open source. Is it like I think that I still understand why is it so free, or maybe is it only free for developing, but when it comes to commercial, to marketing, when it comes to marketing the project, it's all about free now. Yeah.
I suppose it just depends. Like, so in general, you'll find open source projects. Some of them will be completely free for use. So I think Jonathan, like JBake, is something Jonathan created. From that, am I right in saying that would be an open source tool that is free for use essentially by anybody?
Yeah.
You don't.
But when it comes to commercialization, I mean, to marketing of the project, the final project, you have to pay. I mean,
no. I deliberately so for JBake specifically, it depends on what license you pick. Ultimately, that's a big part of it. So I deliberately picked the MIT license to basically make sure there was no barriers in terms of whether it's commercial. If a commercial organization wants to use it, there's no barriers. There's no requirement on them to maybe contribute back to the community. On say, I can't remember which specific GPL license that's a part of, whether it's GPL or lesser GPL, but it depends very much on when you're contributing open source code, what the license is critical and what you can or can't do with it, whether you can utilize it freely or whether there's some obligation on you to do something. If you take that code, change it fundamentally, whether you have to then recontribute that back to an open source, or whether that you're free to put it into your own commercial project and use it as much as you want. It very much depends on the license. So I deliberately picked MIT because there is no real license restrictions.
100% free. Yeah, okay, 100% free.
So there's
I just picked up because I'm working with Java and I'm doing a kind of courses and picked up Corretto Java, Amazon Corretto, and I really have no clue about when it comes to commercializing. I mean, to make the profit of it. Maybe I have to pay for Amazon or something like that.
It very much depends on the license.
Yeah. I think like what you'll find is, I think like with a JDK distribution in general, you'll be able to use it for free. However, if you want support, then you'll pay a subscription. Or if you try and do certain things with it, there might be some restrictions that you would have to be cautious with. But in general, kind of open JDK distributions are free for use. But it's like different distributions have different constraints around them depending on the license they publish with. So it's complicated. If you want a free to use JDK, I don't know about Corretto, it may well be, but something like Adopt, or it's called Adoptium now, but Adopt Open JDK's distribution, that's free to use. So you could check that out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
great to know.
Yeah, no worries. So yeah, back to the website.
Sorry.
No, you're right.
Okay. I've just put a link in the chat to a Bootstrap template, because Bootstrap provides some kind of basic framework pages for certain, shall we say, use cases of a website. So that's one. It just puts more together than a blank space. But Bootstrap's really easy to get started with. It puts more onus on you to do everything yourself in terms of the content parts, whereas let's say the template I picked previously provided more structure of how content should be displayed, but this is very much open.
Just to interrupt, there is something which I find more interesting. Have you ever worked with Bootstrap Studio?
Not with Studio. I've utilized Bootstrap just for. I've taken like older versions, should we say, much older. I don't even know what the latest 4. I've just Googled that. I don't even know if 4 is the latest version, but no, I haven't.
It's
5's the latest. I think they've 5's the latest, and I think they've ripped that Jumbotron.
Okay.
Here's the latest. I mean,
There's the 5 version. I've just changed
feel like the next kind of step with all this is probably going to be us to set up this hack session and try some stuff out. And I try and get a small group together just to play around with stuff, see what we think, and use something really essentially and kind of not spend too much effort, but get a kind of nice first increment of something, get it out there and see what we feel. I reckon, because it's hard, isn't it? Like until it's got our content on it, it's hard to know what it'll look like and our logos and things like that for the Java community.
I don't mind picking up the whole thing if everyone else is okay with it.
I'm all right with that. If we want to just start, get going and start building something.
Yeah, I was messing around with JBake last night. But I think the only thing I bumped into was even though it supports the Pebble template engine, you can't create an initial project using Pebble. I don't think it doesn't pick it up on the CLI.
There isn't an example project for Pebble. Pebble was one of the latest templates that we've added, and nobody's taken that hit of providing an example project. I did that purely because at the time I created the versions that come with the starter project was almost documentation when it was first created. It was kind of like, right, here's how you would do something with JBake. It was to kind of cover the fact that the documentation wasn't really useful to start with. So it was kind of, it's learn by example. So that's why they use a really old version of Bootstrap, but they serve a purpose. But the amount of sites I've seen with people just using them, I was like, they were never intended for that.
Okay.
They would give you an example of how the template engine and the data model should work. This weren't supposed to be a polished, finished project. But when people go, it does the job. Well, fair enough. But it wasn't my intention for that.
Yeah, it seems like okay. There was a few gaps in the documentation. Well, for me as somebody new to it, so I don't know if I'll stick in some.
I'd be interested to hear what those gaps are.
Yeah,
it's always hard to put yourself in that position when
you've already got experience of the product, and you're trying to write it for somebody who's new.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was okay. I need to do some more reading, and then obviously I looked at all the template engines and I quite like Pebble. So
that's a big part. What template engine you use comes down to personal preference, whether you like death by angled brackets or not.
It read the easiest for me out of FreeMarker and Timeleaf and the other ones that you support.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a big choice that we need to make, is what template engine, because a lot of what you're going to do in terms of maybe from a scripting, from a bit of programming, you're going to be doing in their template engine. That's where a lot of the power comes in, from the template engine.
Yeah,
the data model is exposed via from JBake into the template engine, but the template engine allows you to do those conditions, selection, sequence, iteration, etc.
Yeah, I was digging through the source code as well, so yeah, I'll see. Yeah, it looks interesting.
I think I'm totally kind of fine with you running with that and trying to get something up and started, because I mean that's what it's about. I think this piece of work is a learning opportunity for somebody. I don't overly care to learn that much about front end stuff, but if you do, I'm happy for you to kind of take that. I do it because I did the last website, but as you've probably seen, it wasn't I'm no front end whiz. I just kind of cobbled it together. It worked, it was functional, but like somebody who can kind of think about it a bit more carefully and put a bit of, you can use almost like, it's a bit like a portfolio piece, isn't it? Ultimately, from your kind of developer profile, you can kind of say, I created this, and
Yeah, for me, it's more just giving back to the community. I've got so much already from MJC, so it's just like giving something small back.
That's cool. Yeah, no, sounds good to me.
So how do you want to? So we talked before about having like a hack session. Do you want to still do that, or?
Yeah, I'd still do that, because I think there was an interest from other people to get involved, but I just think we need to get the ball moving. So there's a bit of progress, and people think, okay, I can sort of jump on board.
Okay,
I'll change this.
It could be a regular hack session then,
Yeah.
It could just be 2 people on the session, but at least if people see it happening on a regular basis,
They can jump on.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it can be
yeah.
an ad hoc type kind of meeting, which doesn't need the whole Zoom thing. It just it's just a video call, basically, maybe like Google Meet or something like that. It can be anything, can't it?
Yeah.
Jitsi.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was hoping it was. Sorry, I was hoping it was going to drag more people onto your project.
Yeah, it's one of them. I think one thing that I think as a key requirement, I would kind of say for whatever you do is to provide good documentation of how anyone can pick it up and get started easily. And then that means me basically, but everyone else as well. But like if I needed to maintain it, I'm a bit kind of, I like it. I like to know what to do, and it may be something you can encapsulate into, I don't know, an easy to if you think of like I've used things where you might use Docker or something just to kind of encapsulate the build instructions, and it just spins it up locally for you on your host. If you've got Docker installed, you just do Docker compose up or Docker run, and you've got the running app on your laptop, which I think is quite nice if you can kind of make it as simple as possible.
JBake makes it pretty simple already. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean that's it. So I don't know anything about this. That's great.
We do have a Docker app though, just because that has been something that people had requested, and it was earlier this year, I think it was. I finally got around to publishing an official version, but it's good for those people who want if you're a Java developer, the chances are you've got a JDK installed on your host OS.
Yeah. You've probably already got SDK man installed, so just literally SDK man install, JBake, pick
so it's
267, and then you're away.
I think a big driver for me with creating JBake was when you look at you're doing something with Jekyll. I don't have a Ruby environment installed.
Yeah.
I don't, it's that I feel like I'm polluting my operating system with loads of dependencies that I don't actually know where they go. It's the whole, and it's why everybody picks a static site generator related to their favorite program language, something that feel comfortable with, because the chances are you've already got those tools in your host OS, not all through like a VM or a Docker. But for those people who may not be Java developers, that's why I provided a Docker. You might, especially from a CI/CD perspective, they like to have a Docker container to isolate that away.
I've heard that Docker became now paid, maybe only for people who would love to commercialize.
Yeah, I think we should be all right from a personal kind of use perspective, but I think if we were like in my organization where I work, we're now in a position where we're going to have to pay license fees for Docker Desktop.
Yeah,
because of their change. So I think for personal use, and we'd have to check this actually. It doesn't matter. We just wouldn't use it ultimately. We're not going to pay license fees.
So only for Docker Desktop, only if you wanted the GUI, and
I think
you didn't get the GUI in any case on Linux.
Yeah, so if you're using Linux, it's not really a problem. If you're using Mac or Windows, it's a bit different, isn't it?
Is it still free for? I saw this news, but I haven't really read into it yet because I don't use Docker on my desktop that much. It's more kind of it's on a server somewhere, and I tend to run containers that way. But I don't use it. But I suppose that's a.
I think it was anything over, if your company brought in anything over 10 million, you had to pay for Docker Desktop.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's still free for personal use.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Or if you were a smaller organization.
Fewer than 250 employees and less than 10 million in annual revenue. So I think we're none of that.
Yeah, we're safe.
So I think we're fine. We're personal use basically. So I think it's fine.
Okay. So to move this forward, I know in the last call we talked about having like a kickstart session to get people up and running with JBake. Do you want me to still schedule that in? I haven't done it yet. I thought I'll wait until this call really. But we can schedule
I'd still do
something.
that. I think there was enough interest in the last one to
see if anybody says they want to go. Okay.
So what's kind of, I suppose the question I would ask is what kind of session is that? Is that something that's going to set up kind of a bit more informally via the Slack group and people who are already engaged with jump on, or are you going to try and do it as more of an event?
I suppose the problem is if you do it through Slack, I still felt like to have it on Meetup, but be less informal. It's having an event, it's publicized. If people want to join, they can do, but just to set expectation, it's like a brief introduction. It's kind of, I was going to take a lot of the slides I already had from previous talks, just to give people, make sure everyone's on the same level. And then, if it just ends up being me and Craig, we can at least still get something started.
Well, let's do it. Yeah, I mean, let's do it like that. And maybe we kind of treat it a bit like one of our other meetups where we constrain who can share the video, who can speak, just so you're able to focus as a pair and do the work you want to do. Because that'd be my worry, is that you have one of these meetups and then it gets derailed into something that isn't about what you wanted to do, which was actually kind of hack on that website and make some progress.
I think if we even call it a hack session, so it's clear, it kind of manages anybody who joins it. This is what it's for. If this is not what you're expecting, then this isn't for you.
And I suppose doing it in such a way that people in theory could follow along with what you were doing might be nice, potentially. Might not be practical. It's something to think about. That might be kind of a nice side.
And from our perspective, it would be nice if you took I don't know, a 10-minute window and then use that to dig into the source code, so you could get people to look through
show people what you
go through the source code, show current issues that they can contribute to, that sort of thing. Try and entice them onto the project as well.
Yeah, I suppose it's kind of double kind of value. You can kind of share a bit about JBake, give it a bit of publicity, but then also solve a problem with it.
Do a bit of a demo. This is a real life example of how you would use this. Here's the source code. Here's some issues you can work on.
That sounds good. I'd say get that set up. Like
maybe share some known GitHub repositories. I mean, that are useful for Java developers and so on. Maybe for beginners or maybe for intermediate. It depends on which people do we have in the community, and everybody gets kind of initiation to.
So there's interesting. Like what you're talking about there, maybe we kind of jump ahead a little bit, because Craig's on his kind of list of things to maybe talk about. He's talking about like back to basics sessions, and I suppose in some ways you're saying there, like there's maybe open source projects, maybe there's kind of just some basics of Java that we could kind of run some sessions on that are a bit more practical and then go a bit more. I suppose like one-on-one type sessions. Is that what you're thinking, Craig?
Yeah, it's sort of like picking a particular area, like for example, generics. I mean, most people know how to use generics, but then when you start looking at things like PECs, producer, what does it stand for now? Anyway, there's that acronym PECs in terms of generic.
Right. Okay.
So just going through things like that. Well, I've got it open here actually. Producer extends consumer super. So it's when you get into Java generic wildcards and types getting stripped, so generics really only live in the compiler. It's not in the bytecode. Just things like that, which even though people use it on a daily basis, there might be a lot more to it. Just covering things like that. I don't know if there'd be interest from the community and things like that.
I suppose what would you kind of think there then, in terms of like who would how would that structure, and who would kind of host a session like that or run a session like that?
Yeah, I don't know if we get any interest from within the community to come and do something like that. That would be quite nice.
That talking about that reminded me of when I went back and did what it used to be called the Sun Java Certified Programmer exam and study for it. It was I bought one of the study guide book, and it took me back to the start of Java. And there's places where we all live in I assume most people live in an IDE, but this forced you to go, how do you compile a class in the command line? How with the basics that you just took for granted you knew, and then you were like tested, you did the little test at the end of this, and I don't remember that. I don't remember what the order in which the static, the code initialization blocks, which comes first, and it gives you an example of what's the output of this. That back to basics, I class that as, and there's areas you might never use that often. So your knowledge is, I don't remember that. I haven't studied that in ages. But on that topic, I remember the Virtual Jug they covered a book. They went back and kind of did a chapter of a book every session.
I was just in my head as well, actually, book club.
Was it Effective Java? Because I've got it here next to me.
I'm not sure, but that's exactly the book I had in mind as well.
That's the kind of thing that I think I bought the later version because I'd heard that book was like the go-to book for good Java usage, shall we say, of programming. And it's on my list of going, I need to delve into that. I need to delve into it. But that's the kind of, covering that book, going through that book, maybe something along those lines.
Yeah, I'd be interested in that.
Yeah.
So I suppose it's a case of like, you plan an event, the expectation is you turn up having read the chapter, and then you kind of, as a group, you talk about it, you maybe try out a few of the examples and show what they might mean in code and stuff. People can take turns at, coding and things like that if they want. That's
some real world examples of here's rather than the, whatever the book comes up with an example where it has no real life meaning. But if you can tie it in, it gives it a bit more.
I used effective Java when I first started. It was like, I want to know how to write good code, not just code. And it kind of teaches you a lot of good lessons. And I think it was version 2 though when I did it. So it's obviously there's a version 3 out now, isn't there? So it's moved on, and the language is still moving on. No, that'll be a version 4 in like 5 years or something.
Yeah, just see if there's an interest from the community for that. I mean, if it doesn't take off, then fine. We tried something different. See who wants to attend.
I mean, ultimately though, like the way I always kind of think about it is, if you've got at least 2, preferably a few more, but at least you've got at least 2 or 3 people who are interested, then that's enough. Because the people there are going to get the value. It'd be nice to have more people sometimes in a bigger group, but it's not essential.
We could go through an existing code base like JBake, and then
that's probably
some
not
really
a
good
good
examples.
Probably not a good
look at this amazing.
Something I'm going to share in chat, which is kind of links back to your kind of back to basics, Craig, is Heinz Kabutz. He's released like a YouTube course called Juppies. It's a complete beginner's course for Java programming. And I've not looked at it properly, but Heinz is a great guy and he does a lot of good stuff. So I imagine it's pretty good, but it's nice bite size. Like the videos all look like they're about 2-3 minutes, maybe max, maybe 5 to 10 minutes. And you can just pick this up and work your way through. But it starts, I think, from nothing, like learning all about just getting started, creating a Git repository for your code and some basics around that, different JDKs, all those kind of interesting things. So that, I just wanted to share that because I thought that kind of aligns a little bit with some of the idea of these content. It probably doesn't go as deep as you might want to in a back to basics, like generic thing, going like really kind of picking at it and understanding all the details. However, it might kind of cover some of these things.
You could watch that, you could say, right, the first session will cover the first 4 of them or something.
Yeah, maybe that's the thing, isn't it? Like, a bit of a
just follow them, and then
talk about what you've kind of, so if I'm just looking at the list now, like the 4th, 5th, 6th kind of options, and maybe the 7th are like Oracle JDK, Oracle Open JDK, Azure Zulu JDK, and then installing the JDK. So you could have a whole little kind of session just covering those, and then talking about like, what are the different distributions? Why are the different distributions?
Yeah.
What is the JDK? That kind of stuff, which might be quite interesting.
Yeah, JDK versus JRE, and is there a difference now?
Yeah, so actually, this is interesting, isn't it? Because like when we took a minute ago, we were saying like who would talk about something, who would show like or provide the content around the topic, and maybe we don't need to get somebody to, because it already exists on something like YouTube. And
it just gives you structure, doesn't it?
Yeah. Wanted to kind of think about a bit, I reckon. I think like that's something for the I'm really keen for, is trying to create a more collaborative kind of learning experience where people can kind of jump in, get value around kind of sharing things and talking to each other, which isn't just about a speaker-led kind of talk every time.
Which is why I think it's great that we've got JBake, because we can get people involved and bring them into the project. Obviously, we've got John here that can help out, get people onto there, learn, fix bugs.
Here's how not to do it.
Is that what you class JBake's code base as? A lot of anti-pattern examples.
Yeah, but the problem is that code base is probably nearly 10 years old. So
Right.
I'd like to think I'm a better developer than 10 years ago, but I might look at some of that code and go, yeah, I didn't really know what I was doing then. I suppose it's that.
That sounds like real software to me.
Yeah, imposter syndrome, isn't it? It's kind of, it was a big step. I found I debated publishing the source code over a couple of nights. You know, it was a big moment. I felt it was a big momentous, you know, you're putting yourself out there to be critiqued in a way. And that took a bit for me to get over.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's the best thing I ever did. But at the time, I didn't know it would be good for me. But
yeah.
Do you think, guys, that staying a developer is a good idea, or maybe after 17 years or maybe 15 years, you'd rather go to management or architecture or maybe teaching, or I don't know. I mean, I'm in the mind of solving problem at the age of 55 or maybe 50, something like, I don't know. I can't imagine it. I don't know how people like
it's. I've done a lot. Well, given what's going on,
I don't think that somebody's 50 years mind, or I mean, brain is like something with kind of, I don't know. Like it's not for sure. It's not somebody like who is 20. I don't know for sure.
For me personally, I've come to the realization I love learning, and do it working in IT. That kind of scratches my itch, you know, because there's constant learning, there's constant finding out what's going on in the industry, keeping abreast of topics. So for me, that's probably why I love IT or software development, or you know, whatever it is. You know, if it's, you know, the latest, whatever the technology, whether it's the latest gadget or something, I just like learning. And I think that's why you know, in answer to your question, I'll still be debugging something or trying something when I'm 55. I'll still want to learn something new. And I think that's my passion, is learning. I like to learn something new. If I can learn something new, I enjoy it. That's what I enjoy. It's not specifically about, you know, there's days when I hate my computers. You know, there's days when I don't want to be anywhere near them, but we all have days like that. But that's me personally.
Interesting.
It's a slight concern to me, because obviously I'd like to work as a programmer until the day I die. Really, I don't really want to stop working. I'm sort of the same as John. Like, it's not really a job to me. It's just like an extension of being at home. It's just great. You know, there's always new things to do. The flip side of that is a lot of development seems to be driven by the need for constant change, rather than an engineering perspective, rather than a real strongly defined technical reason, especially the front end stuff that you see. So you've always got to be doing the latest and greatest, otherwise you're like, your CV is now outdated and no one really wants to hire you. And
I think that's a kind of, unfortunately, like, people who think of it like that, it's a bit of a narrow kind of view, because I think that the skills you have as a software developer should be, and I believe, like, if you've got good skills, they're transferable between any technology. So not having the latest technology shouldn't negate you from any opportunities, although it does. And I kind of totally get that. If you don't have that box of, I know Kubernetes, you might not get that job or something like that. But at the same time, if you're a good engineer, you think about problems the right way, you go about, you know, work the right way, like professionalism and all that kind of stuff, then it shouldn't matter. But yeah, I mean, in reality, it does.
Yeah, there's an interview with Alan Kay, and he describes modern development as like as sort of pop, like everything's very trend driven, and no one really wants to think a lot about it. And yeah, he's got a very good point. And then the other thing as well is, well, from what I've seen anyways, you get to a particular point or age really, and people expect you to move into management. So you could be very strong from a technical and engineering perspective, but you could be an absolutely mediocre manager. So now you've lost somebody with.
What's that principle? Is it the Peter principle? Promoted to a level of incompetence. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's an interesting one, and like this kind of goes back to Splintoss's original point about do you become a manager? And like, I've been moved into more of like a tech lead type role, and ended up doing less development and got less enjoyment out of my job. So I made a conscious decision of not going down that route of management and staying very technical, which in some organizations will limit you because the kind of career path is promotion, and those promotions are going from like junior, senior, tech lead, something else. So you're kind of moving more and more away from the day-to-day hands-on stuff, becoming more of somebody who's in meetings and do more strategic things, which is great for some people, but not for everybody. And it wasn't great for me, just not because I couldn't do it, but because I didn't enjoy doing it necessarily, or I didn't get the balance right of what I did enjoy. So yeah, like now I'm kind of on a technical kind of career path, which has some people responsibility, but I'm not a manager as such, if that makes sense. So you kind of got the balance right, but not every organization will be big enough or innate feel you're capable of supporting that kind of, I suppose, path that you want to take. So that's always the challenge. Sometimes you have to move around organizations to find, to get the promotion you want, maybe in terms of, package, compensation, whatever it might be, but to also then stay technical.
Okay. Got you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Because I already, sincerely speaking, I'm 30. I'm kind of intermediate developer, and I don't know exactly how a brain of somebody who's kind of 58 in compare of somebody who's 30 or something like. I mean, when it comes to solving problems, is it that's
I don't know.
for somebody or is?
Depends on the person. My dad's now like late 60s. He's still coding every day. He, he's involved in startups and stuff in tech. And like, if it totally depends on the person. If you've got that kind of mind that needs that, I suppose, that curious mind, you need that engagement, keeping your brain kind of occupied. Then I think you'll find, you almost kind of keep your mind healthy by using it, I suppose, in a certain extent.
Okay.
Yeah, I've worked with contractors who are 60 plus, and they were absolutely razor sharp. You wouldn't have thought they were any different from mid 20s. So it's not really what I've seen that people slow down.
Yeah.
Get wiser.
Yeah, probably. I mean, that's a lot of you got the battle scars, but by the time you get to 60, you definitely got the battle scars and the experience that hopefully kind of help you make some better decisions. I don't know. There's probably new things that you make more mistakes with. That's always the challenge with software, isn't it? In IT.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
No, it's fine. It's kind of like how this meetup has gone. It's kind of a bit like a community discussion. Let's talk about the community. Then it's a bit of a, I don't know, a bit of a kind
group
of
therapy.
Yeah, group therapy. It's interesting actually because like Jonathan, we've talked about in the past of having something a bit more like a discussion based, like have some topics, talk about things that are interesting, and this is kind of turning into one of them, and it feels it's quite enjoyable.
I noticed the Fuji have started a podcast.
Have they? Right.
Yeah, which is really good. They've had James Gosling on one as well.
Right.
I didn't realize it was James Gosling when I was listening to it. I was thinking, who's this character? Who's this person? And then twigged who it was.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Well, that's a really good example because is he still working for Amazon?
I believe so, yes. Because he talked a lot about the his previous role. Was it in
robotics?
Robotics, because it was with Frank. Frank was on the podcast as well.
Right.
They were talking about Java in the embedded space and how it's ironic that it started off in the embedded world before it transitioned or made a big dent in the back end business world, but it started off in embedded. The fact that that they're trying to convince people that Java's good for the embedded world is, quite ironic to some people who've been there from the start.
Well, it's seen as the enterprise software in general, isn't it, Java these days? And it kind of, I suppose, like people turn their nose up at it a bit. It's a bit too kind of baked into big organizations. It's not cool enough, is it?
Yeah.
But you see that quite often. It's not quite hip enough at the beginning, and then they run into performance issues, and then they flip over to Java.
Yeah.
There was somebody at one of the JAX conferences. I don't know whether he runs RedMonk. He gave a talk or a keynote, and he said, when web companies grow up, they use Java. Which was a great quote.
Okay.
Yeah, they try these other languages, but when they realize they need to do it right, they use Java.
Well, I've tried to learn other languages. Like Go is really popular, but you start looking at libraries and they're totally missing. You'll find like in the Java space there'll be 3 or 4 really good open source communities around what you're looking for, and you look at Go and there's like one person doing it, and the last time it was updated was 3 years ago, and there's about 60 issues that don't even have comments on, and you think, oh.
Yeah, because sometimes you need support, that's all about. If you don't find support, it becomes so kind of a hassle to continue developing and so on. It's kind of weird sometimes. Whenever I stuck in a problem, I have to find anybody. I'm a member of so many communities, Java communities, and whenever I stuck in any problem, I try my best first of all and try all solution. I sleep on it. I kind of take a break or no matter what, but I know that there will be somebody who can help me. But in other languages, they are so totally different.
Yeah. I mean,
It's not the case. It's not the case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Java ecosystem is absolutely massive. It's well established, and there's so many people who can help you solve your problems.
Yeah.
A lot of your problems have already been solved basically by other people with more well-maintained solutions and whatnot. Yeah. So I suppose thinking a bit back to the list of points we had at the beginning, things to talk about. Let's see if there's anything else we want to kind of chat. We talked about like future guests. I suppose like this is an opportunity for everybody's got anybody they want us to try and reach out to speak at the Java community. Please let us know, because we can do that. We have various of us have different connections in the Java community, so we can kind of speak to people, try and make some contact with speakers we might want to get involved. So yeah, there's more social events. That was a thing that was mentioned. I think there was 4 of us who met up in Manchester last month. We had a beer, which was nice. That was myself, Craig, Swapnil, and was it Christopher Mills. So that was good. It was kind of like the first time we've had any kind of in-person Java meetup as such. It wasn't a meetup, but get together, let's say. That was nice. But yeah, I think it'd be nice to do that again at some point. Informal again, probably just like trying to organise something via the Slack channel. But that then probably leads on. I still don't feel we're in a position to start thinking about in-person meetups. I just don't feel like there's a demand yet, but I don't know. I might be wrong there.
Is it worth putting out a questionnaire just to gauge whether people, just to ask the question, just to see if people are there yet? It's hard for me because I'm, in Wales, it's still work from home if you can. So it's different between Wales and England. But
I mean, in November we'll be back in the office like 3 days a week. So maybe that's different. Maybe it is changing now under our feet. Like essentially things are getting back to that more normal structure.
I've not seen that from our side. More people are pushing to work from home and not go into the office.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to put difference, don't get me wrong. I'd rather work from home, except for on the occasions where it really adds value to what I'm trying to do, which sometimes it does. But in general, I'm happy to kind of work from home. But at the same time, yeah, there is companies are moving. Maybe it's something that isn't really a reality until next year. I don't know, but I think getting a bit of a question out there to people, asking them is probably the best way. We've got like 1,300 members. I don't know how many of those are active, but we can mail that list and see what people want. Essentially, if there's kind of 2 sides here. There's people saying yes, they want one, and there's people actually turning up. There's another question, which boils down to a lot of factors like timing and things like that, but also just that commitment of actually going in to Manchester if you're not in there already and things like that.
I think a good mix for me would be the online Zoom sessions, and then maybe just one social get together a month. Yeah, just meeting up for like a beer or a coffee.
Yeah.
Just talking a lot of rubbish.
Yeah, I mean that would work for me, and it's quite nice in the sense because it is just a bit like this chat now, isn't it? You just talk about stuff, random kind of conversations, go on whatever threads you want, and it's just a break from being at home or being in any of the other circles that you kind of move in. It's that kind of more geeky one that maybe you don't get all the time, which is nice to have.
Yeah, I got a lot out of it last time we met.
Yeah, we should do that then. We should set something up. I'm a bit busy this month, to be honest, moving house, but I'd be up for one probably early October.
That sounds good.
Yeah, we could even put that one in the meetup kind of calendar, couldn't we? To be honest, no, Manchester Java Community Social, choose a venue, turn up. I don't know if you have to. I don't think you have to book places in Manchester. You can just turn up, can't you? In general, and probably what are places that you would need to book. Like we went to Brewdog, didn't we? And that was
Yes.
we just turned up and got a table. And that's fine.
Yeah, I'd really enjoy another social.
Yeah,
Need to book it in.
we can do that then. I suppose is there anything else like you want to talk about then today? I think we've kind of exhausted my kind of Craig's bullet point list pretty much.
Yeah, that was it for me.
Yeah,
For me was it also. I mean, I like this community, and I will join the community as soon. I mean, as possible as I can, because I'm still a student and I have this 8-hour part school. Things, and whenever I find time, whenever it suits me. I mean, when it comes to schedules, to my planning, my calendar, I will join it.
no, you're always welcome. So,
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And I can also, I mean, give some advice when it comes to Java core or some Spring. No, I have some knowledge in Spring and Java core.
Cool.
And a little bit about Java EE. When it comes, if somebody have a question or something like that, I can answer.
That reminds me, actually, I'll share the link to our Slack group in the chat now, because if you want to join us, you can. That's the kind of place where we can kind of share any problems you've got, and we can join as a community. We can kind of help each other out, can't we?
Yeah.
So I'll get you the link for that now. There we go. So, yeah.
Oh, I wanted to ask about renaming the meetups under projects and doing it on a year-by-year basis. Because I think at the moment we just have a meetups project, so it's going to get pretty busy unless we delete. So I don't know if we wanted to have like a meetups 2020, meetups 2021, etc.
Let me share.
Okay.
Let me share my screen and we'll look at what you're talking about. So this is what you're kind of talking about.
Yeah, under projects.
We've got one meetup board, and that's kind of got everything on there. So I suppose like this list will get longer. Is that what you mean, basically?
Yeah, eventually it's going to become a bit unmanageable. You're going to have hundreds of items.
What do we want to do with that list, though, in terms of managing it? I suppose would be the question of that.
Create a project per year or something. That's what I was saying.
I suppose the question is, in what way is it unmanageable? What do we actually do with the dunk column other than it be there?
There's going to be tons of items inside there that are not really relevant that you want to look at. You might want it for historical reasons to go through and see guests that we've booked on before, that sort of thing.
I suppose it's sort the signal from the noise, I guess.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
I think that's maybe. I had a similar view, but I don't know whether that's my personal OCD kicking in.
I don't have a strong opinion. So feel free to. I mean, this one is essentially this year, isn't it? So maybe we name this one to 2021, and when 2022 pops around, we create a new one.
Because we are getting close. We've got up to the end of October already, and we've got some ideas going forward. Yeah, so we've got this year pretty much fully booked. Or
So
we've
the only
got
thing that
content.
the only thing that I would, from a usability perspective, I would like to come into here and see, September, August, September, June, October, December, January in a list, so I can see my schedule. However, if they're on separate boards, I have to jump between two boards to see what we've got planned.
Yeah, I thought about having multiple columns for the months going across, so you could see how many. I suppose it could be my OCD, but how many. It's kind of right. There's 2 already in that month. There's nothing for that month. It's kind of a visible guide for the year as like a calendar.
I'm going to say, are we just recreating a calendar there?
Yeah, basically.
That's all problem.
Yeah, that's basic.
A shared Google calendar or something like that.
Yeah,
meetups in it.
Yeah.
Are those projects we'd love to do, or are those kind of one project per year that we can achieve together? Or...
Yeah, so this is just everything at the moment. So I think what the proposal potentially is like this board would become meetups 2021. We'd have another board for 2022.
Sorry, because I wasn't listening. I wasn't listening. I was kind of checking my Slack in order to join this.
Yeah, so if we were to plan something for January, that would be on a different.
Oh, okay.
Essentially, yeah, I don't mind either way too much, but like from a personal perspective, whatever's simplest would be preferable. Like from a use, not just from a use, what we do day to day, that's what I'll be optimizing for, rather than what we might do in 2 years if we want to look back over what we've done.
Okay.
So like from a user experience perspective, this board, if it's keeping it simple to use, would be quite important.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I'm open to ideas and experimentation at the same time, because sometimes you don't know until you do.
I think you're probably correct. It's kind of trying to optimize something that fundamentally isn't broken. Because I've avoided creating it because it still does the job. It works. I've not got an actual problem with it. It's just purely preferential, I guess.
Yeah, I just saw it as we had a project per year, and it was to deliver at least 12 meetups, and then it was closed off. Then the next one, meetups 2022. We need to deliver at least 12 meetups.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
That's just our
a personal goal of 12 meetups minimum. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, what we could definitely do, which is quite easy, is add labels to this. It puts a year on them, so you can just filter the board by the year you're interested in. So you can we can already filter by labels and say, let's filter by like meetup. And then that gets us the meetup. So if we put another label on, which was the year, such as 2020 or 2021 or 2022, we could just filter the board right down to what we're interested in. So that might give you some of the value you're looking for.
That gives. Can you have a label on by default? So you could by default label it for the current year.
It's driven off the project. So let's see. Look at the project.
Because that would sort of fix my use case for it.
So you probably can. If we create a new issue, you default. Yeah, you probably have to change your default. There might be a way of kind of making this there as a default.
Yeah, I'm sure there is somewhere, isn't it? There's like a template file you can define.
Yeah,
there must be, because if you go to like issues on a project, it only shows you the open issues.
There is, yeah. So you have we can do that. Maybe we should have that anyway for the things that we create. This gives us a bit of structure. But yeah, I think you would do in the project, you have like a .github folder in here, and that in there you put templates for issues you create and things like that. So that might be a nice kind of middle ground for now that gives us some of that value of being able to focus on what's important right now. You could even like put the month on it as well if you wanted, and then it would be able to filter right to 2021 January, see how many you had. But it's how far you want to go with labels ultimately. I think just getting the year on would be a good start.
Yeah,
that would do. That would
fix it for me.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So I mean, should be quite easy to do, I think. So we've got all these issues. If we kind of abolish them.
I've never seen. I don't know what gbake is. What's never heard of it.
Oh, we just want to remove those, don't we? Just want all issues basically. And if we select them,
Okay.
I
gbake.
think everything's from, is everything from this year? I think it will be. Anyway, let's do it for this year. Oh, it won't let me create the label. So I have to create a label somewhere else by the looks of it.
Yeah, we can have a play with it later on.
Yeah, it'll be in here, won't it?
Do a bit of house cleaning.
Yeah. I'm involved now. I need to complete this. I won't be happy.
The other thing I was going to mention, I'm still interested in that idea of having, the more informal discussions, like kind of along the lines of maybe a podcast or like, topical news discussion.
Yeah.
I think that's just my personal,
There we go. Everything's got 2021. And we can sort templates out and stuff. But yeah, no, I'm up for that. I think like having that, I think we should try and set something up and just maybe we do it without kind of maybe, I don't know, this is just my fear of kind of getting it wrong, but I was thinking maybe we do it without kind of intending to necessarily broadcast it, just to see how it goes on and record it. And
maybe that's probably a good way to start. I know it's a mental barrier you've got to get over first, and if you can ease that, it just gets you through that process.
Yeah. So I suppose like thinking about that a little bit, what would that be? I suppose in terms of planning for something like that, it'd be a case of having almost like a panel, but a group of people, maybe 4 or 5 people, sharing a list of current topical things that we want to like news items, new features that are coming out in Java, that kind of stuff, and saying here's what we're going to talk about in this session, and then the people who are attending either hopefully they might already know about it, or they spend a little bit of time at least getting the gist of what that thing's about, so you can hold a conversation about it essentially. Yeah.
I would rather say something, please. I would love to. If I wish I could have some documentation about new Java features and so on, because I'm not comfortable with official Java code documentation. Sorry for that, but kind of.
Yeah. So I mean that is a bit of a problem in the Java community in terms of like.
Just it shouldn't be a documentation, but at least just a talk, just what is new, what is not new, what's I'm
going to share with you a link to a website called FoodJ, which is kind of trying to be that place, that go-to of news and things like that.
Oh, thank you so much. I would
they've done a few guided talks for us, which have been good. But yeah, you can get, I think they release blogs quite regularly. Some of it's all different topics. You can see what the new releases contain quite easily and things like that. So it seems to be becoming quite a good kind of resource for this. This kind of thing.
There was mention in the start of the last talk that Frank did. Was it Gaetan? Gave like a brief introduction to what the features that website has about change logs for the Java releases.
Yeah.
That's useful.
Yeah, if you check on the YouTube channel, the last talk, the beginning of that is about this website, FoodJ, so it's worth checking.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, so our time is kind of up. I'm going to have to head off. But yeah, thanks everybody for joining. It sounds like we've got a few things to kind of progress, mainly on the website, get a social event set up. There's not too much pressure on future speakers right now, but we'll probably want to start thinking about November pretty soon. And then also, maybe we should kind of try and get something in place for having this little news kind of topical conversational session. So we'll probably coordinate that by Slack and see who's interested and up for it, plan something and make that happen.
Sorry, one quick thing. Do you do like Christmas get-togethers, or is that something you don't normally do?
We've had them in the past, when we've been like in Manchester. I've been to a few kind of Christmas socials, just essentially couple of beers rather than a proper meetup, that kind of thing. So yeah, probably probably be up for that. It always just depends. It's probably one of those things for me personally, it'd be after work for an hour or two, as opposed to an all-night session. Anything crazy like that, if that's what you had in mind.
No, nothing crazy. I just wanted to see if
Oh.
you had something sort of official or semi-official that you did.
Yeah, and I would say it's just another social event, call that Christmas social event, rather than, yeah. The problem with Manchester is it's always busy around that time, so it's kind of finding somewhere where you can all get together with the number of people who might turn up. Well, it's never
Yeah,
that many. You're talking like between 10 and 20 people we've had in the past.
All right.
All right.
I'm sure I can sell that one.
Yeah, that's
Finishing early one day.
Half hour. All right, brilliant. Well, thanks everybody for joining. It's been a good session, and speak to you all again soon.
All right. Cheers.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care.